everyone Sarnai. We are getting started we're just getting ready to get started with this week's English by sermon. And this is a quick check to make sure that if you're connected with us via our YouTube channel or the web radio, you're able to hear me. So we're streaming live today on YouTube as well as our web radio. This is a quick sound test to make sure you can hear me loud and clear, hopefully. So please drop a note just to confirm. Just drop a message either on Skype, on YouTube, and if possible on the web radio, depending on which medium you're connected, so that I know if this is all working. Okay, I'm not sure you can hear me, so let's try that again. Devan Sarnai, and welcome to all who've joined us. This is a quick sound test to make sure that you can hear us. We're streaming live on YouTube, on our usual YouTube channel, as well as our web radio. So you should be able to hear us on both or either. This is a quick check that it's all working before we get started. So if you could please confirm by dropping a message on the YouTube chat window, on the web radio chat window, or perhaps on Skype, then I know this is working, and then we can get going. Also, if you're having any problems, then please let me know. Okay, thank you. I just had someone confirm that you can hear me on YouTube. That's a good result. Just waiting for someone to confirm that the web radio is working. I can see there are a few people connected on the web radio. So in fact, I've just checked myself. So the web radio is working fine. Excellent. Right. Let's get started then. So, welcome to you all. This program is being streamed live and will be available on YouTube, so you can watch, or perhaps listen is a more appropriate term to use in this context. Listen to this program after, usually a couple of hours after we've ended the stream. YouTube usually takes a little while to process the session and then make it available. That's not a delay on our end. That's usually YouTube, and I think they do some processing behind the scenes. We're also streaming on the web radio, so if you have any trouble listening on YouTube, then the web radio is also available. Excellent, I've had someone confirm on the web radio as well. Perfect. And I think normally we also have someone who's very kind enough to make the recording available on the Skype group, or available to the Skype group for as a third option for leisurely listening. Usually someone has trouble falling asleep. Okay, so let's get started then. As always, it's important that we take a moment to recognize the fact that the reason we have this Dhamma that we eagerly look forward to listen to, eagerly look forward to understand, to make sense of, in the hope that we can come to a level of comprehension, a level of understanding that will help us attain Nibbana. The reason we have this Dhamma today is because there was one person, the world's greatest philosopher, the greatest philosopher we have seen in the last 2 millennia, who dedicated his entire life to propagating what he realized under the Bodhi tree. There is no doubt we're talking about Gautama Samma Sambuddha. It is because of him that we have this Dhamma. It is because he sacrificed his life and accepted an infinite amount of pain and suffering when in fact he had the opportunity to end this painful process that is samsara at the feet of Dipankara, Lord Buddha, very long before he became a Lord Buddha himself. So let us take this moment to pay our respect, pay our reverence, to venerate Gautama Samma Sambuddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Let us also be grateful to all those beings, sentient beings, who helped us get to where we are today. There are countless people who we have come past in previous lives, people who were our relatives, our teachers, our colleagues, our friends, who may have helped us. Today we have no idea where they might be. Perhaps they're in better places than we are. They may be Devas, they may be Brahmas, or perhaps they may be in a worse place than we are, perhaps born as a predator or in one of the hells, or perhaps an animal. Either way, it's important that we take a moment to reflect on the fact that it is with an infinite amount of help and support that we have been able to achieve this result, which is being born a human being. And I think today I want to emphasize that point a little bit more. We have discussed this previously, but what I've been thinking about lately is, despite everything that we experience, why is it that people still look forward to another day, another month, another year, look forward to rejoicing, look forward to the next birth in this samsara? And what's clear to me, at least to the way I see it, is that although we might understand the Lord Buddha's teaching, and particularly the First Noble Truth, there's a difference between knowing and understanding. There's a difference between knowing and comprehending. So we'll be talking about that today. But before that, it's important, as I said, to recognize all of those beings who today might be in better places or worse places than we are. Let's invite them, because today that we are Aryas in the sense that we value the Lord Buddha's teaching. For a very long time we have considered ourselves to be the most important, the most significant entity. We have thought to ourselves that what I think is what is most important. It doesn't matter what great philosophers come and teach us. They come and go, they say what they think, but we've thought to ourselves, well, we know better. And unfortunately it's that foolish opinion that has brought us this far along in samsara. Let us not forget the fact that it has been over 2,500 years since the Lord Buddha's Parinirvana, and we are still in samsara. But nevertheless, today we revere the Lord Buddha's teaching, and so we look forward to learning this Dhamma, to understanding this Dhamma, and to practice it. And now that we have the opportunity to do that, let's invite the Devas, the Brahmas, and perhaps other beings who we've come past, who've helped us get here. Let's invite them to join us, to take from today's sermon, today's discussion, what they may be able to, an understanding hopefully that will help them achieve enlightenment, and if not that, at least to gain a certain amount of wisdom that might help them be born in a better place than they are today, so that perhaps at least in a future birth they may have the good fortune to be born with wisdom that will help them. Wisdom is what helps us understand and comprehend this Dhamma. So as I make the invitation, can I ask you all to join me and extend that invitation to relatives of yours, friends of yours, that you will have associated with, to come and join us to listen to this Dhamma and attain the ultimate fruit, that is the four stages of Nibbana, Sotapanna, Sakurdagami, Anagami and Arhat. Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gachantu Devata Saddhamman Munirajasnse Sunantu Sakmokkadam Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Vadanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Vadanta Dhamma Savana Kalo Ayam Vadanta. Okay. As I said before, it's worthwhile taking a moment to ask ourselves, to consider, spend some time thinking about why is it that when suffering seems to be so obvious, beings, let's keep it simple, let's talk about human beings, because we can relate to that. Why is it that the majority of human beings, you can think of your friends, your family, relatives, perhaps yourself, why is it that we still feel attached to this world, to the things that we have, to our material possessions? Why do we feel that it's really a struggle to let go? Because let's be honest, I got to know today that this is apparently the 16th program that we are running today, and that's only the English program. We've been streaming, or at least making available, the Sinhala programs for a much longer period of time, for many years now. And despite the fact that our listeners, and I'm not just talking about our listeners, but let's take the general population. It's a day and time when, in today's stage, we are able to see that there's a huge amount of interest in Buddhism. You've got to admit that. Unlike perhaps the last 5-10 years, there seems to be a really strong interest. People seem to be a lot more curious about what the Buddha taught us, about Buddhism, about how does Buddhism have an answer to the problems that we see today, the pain, the suffering that I'm experiencing. And therefore people listen to a lot of Dhamma, and also in today's, thanks to today's technology, all it takes is just going on YouTube, and it will probably take you a couple of seconds before you come across a sermon. I'm not necessarily talking about an English sermon, but again, there's plenty of that as well. But generally, there's a lot of Dhamma, or there are a lot of sermons out there. There are a lot of books that teach us about the Four Noble Truths. There's a lot of teaching. There are various classes. In fact, there are some classes that teach Abhidhamma for those who feel or believe that it is through an understanding of Abhidhamma that one is able to attain Nibbana. For those that believe that it's through meditation that one is able to do that, then there are classes for that. In fact, there are meditation camps. Some run for many weeks, some for many months. And I do remember when I was back in the UK, the establishment of the monastery called Amaravati was very popular. There was a time when I was looking for a meditation retreat, and I went on their website, and it very soon became obvious that this was a very popular place. And I think the next availability when I checked was over a year from when I was looking. So you have to book these things at least a year in advance. And I think that's not just Amaravati. There are almost all meditation retreats, particularly in the Western world, are very popular, and you have to make a great effort, and also perhaps convince the chief incumbent or perhaps your retreat master that you're serious. So the point I'm trying to make is there are lots of things that people are doing these days, and that could be by cultivating virtue, so sila, by cultivating concentration through meditation, so that's samadhi, and doing various things in the hope of cultivating wisdom, that is prajna, so sila, samadhi, prajna. Virtue, concentration, and wisdom, the three pillars that help one to fulfill the Lord Buddha's teaching. So there seems to be a lot of activity that people seem to be engaged in to practice sila, samadhi, prajna, and therefore in the hope that they are able to achieve nibbana. But despite all of that, when you ask someone to, for example, let go of your material life, let go of your lay life and come become a monk or a nun, so essentially ordain, people struggle. Now, this is not a finger-pointing exercise by any stretch of imagination, so please do not take it in that context. Quite frankly, there was a time when I wanted to do that, but there were certain circumstances which prevented me from making that step. So, for example, people have duties and responsibilities to their workplace, to their family, friends, or perhaps to other authorities. Maybe they might have taken a loan from someone and want to make sure that they pay it back before they let go of a worldly existence. Fair enough. And that is absolutely right thinking. You couldn't fault someone for wanting to make sure that when they let go of something, when they're leaving their material world behind, they're having minimal impact on the people that they are letting go, on the people that are going to be left behind, on the various enterprises that will have to continue without the involvement of the person that's letting go. Fair enough. Sorry, I'm just getting a message from someone to say that the YouTube stream is not that clear. I wonder if that's felt by others or is it just a one-off. Please let me know if you're unable to hear me on YouTube. I've made a slight adjustment and hopefully that's a little bit better. Is that any better? Can you hear me okay now? We've been having some technical limitations, so as I've mentioned in the past, I sometimes have to so I use a laptop most of the time for these programs, and I have on most occasions little choice but to use the mic on the laptop, and sometimes if there's noise in the background, then the speech is interrupted. But I think that problem is going to be solved pretty soon. So hopefully you can hear me a little bit better now. I've noticed a minor adjustments to move the laptop closer to me. Hopefully that's better. Okay. There's background noise. Okay. I'm going to try something. Sorry you were interrupted, but I want to make sure that you can hear me okay, and without because I know it can be a little bit annoying, especially when you're listening to a sermon for a long period of time. If the voice is not clear, if there's a lot of background noise, then it can be a little bit annoying, and we don't want that. So I'm going to try something. It will take me a couple of seconds, so if after a couple of seconds you are not able to hear me, then please let me know. Also, if you are able to hear me better, then please let me know as well. Does that make it any better? Is that any better? Is that any better now? Are you not able to hear me at all? There should be less background noise than there was before. Hopefully better. Okay. Right. Hopefully we can continue. Okay, let's continue. But if it gets annoying again, then no background noise. Great. Okay, if it gets annoying again, then please let me know. That's perfectly fine, because ultimately, I do appreciate the fact that it's always good to be able to sit down face to face and have these programs, but unfortunately we don't always have the opportunity to do that. If that were the case, either I'd have to fly to wherever you are, or you'd have to come down to Sri Lanka every week. That's not practical. So there are, as I said, I think in terms of technology, there'll be an improvement in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully the stream will be better next time we do this. Right. So where were we? We were talking about why people find it difficult to let go, despite associating, despite listening to and practicing the Buddha's teaching. So there must be something that is just not clicking. It's like if you were in a math lesson, in a math class, right? Say you're learning a new formula, or you're learning a new technique. Let's say that was calculus. Okay, so your teacher is teaching you calculus. They're working out all these sums on the board, and after the halfway through the lesson, they give you a sum and say, right, work that out. So you start working it out, but halfway, just as you get started, you can sense it when you understood something versus when you're just following instruction. I think that's the best way to put it. There's a difference between you understanding how to solve that problem. So I'm talking about calculus, right? There's a difference between you understanding, for our very young listeners out there, let's take multiplication or addition, if you haven't covered calculus yet. So calculus is a method that is taught in mathematics, particularly when you are in O-level or A-level advanced level classes. So there's a difference between following instructions. I mean, someone could write down all the steps to solve a particular problem and then give that sheet of instructions to you and say, this is how you solve a calculus problem. Here's the problem you need to solve. Now go ahead and do it. You then follow this instruction sheet, step 1, step 2, step 3, and so forth. And there's no doubt you'll get the right answer if you follow the right steps, and all the right steps have been written down clearly for you. So if the steps are correct, there are no missing steps, then you can do it, no problem. But if you've been in this situation where you've tried that and you're getting the right answer, but someone takes the instruction sheet away and you feel like you're lost, and they give you another sum and say, okay, now go ahead and do this, and you're thinking, can I have that instruction sheet again, please? I mean, I've been in that situation. Probably you've been as well. So, but if I understood how to solve that problem and really understood it through my own comprehension, then I would be able to work it out in my own head. I would be able to explain to somebody else why I'm following each of the steps that I am. I would be able to explain to someone what steps to follow, and as I said, why you're following those steps and how each of those steps helps you get to the answer. But that requires understanding. Knowledge itself is not enough, because if someone asks you why, knowledge is only going to help you say, because that's what my teacher said, or that's what the book says, or that's what I've done before. Whereas understanding will help you explain in your own words why something is the way it is. In your own words, why you're adding two numbers in one place and you're taking away the difference in another place, why you're multiplying two numbers in one place and dividing in another place, and perhaps why you're trying to find the square root of something. You'll be able to explain it. Now, Buddhism, as much as it is a science or Buddhist philosophy, I try and be careful in my use of terminology, because Buddhism is generally seen as a religion, and Buddhist philosophy is what we're talking about. It's essentially, what did the Buddha teach? Because that's what the Buddha gave us. He gave us a philosophy. He gave us a perspective. a way of looking at life. I remember when I was younger, people asked me, what is Buddhism? And I used to say it's a way of life. I think I probably wouldn't put it exactly that way if someone asked me, what is Buddhism now? I'd say Buddhism is probably best defined as a religion, but Buddhist philosophy, or what the Buddha taught, was a perspective on life, and the crux of what his teaching is how and why I need to try and put an end to this rebirth process. Anyway, that was a sidetrack. So the difference is that's the difference between knowing something and understanding something, and the same applies to Buddhist philosophy. To be able to understand something, you have to be able to get the feeling behind it. What do I mean by get the feeling behind it? What I mean by that is you might have several teachers come and teach you, and they wouldn't have to follow the same, they wouldn't have to use the same words, they wouldn't have to use the same examples, they wouldn't even have to use the same terminology, but they would be able to convey the feeling. So, for example, let's take something you feel day-to-day life, something like love or affection. How would you describe love or affection? That could be towards your parents, or parents to their children. How would you describe that? It's not a formula somewhere. It's not something technical. It's not I do this, that and the other, and therefore I love this person, or I love my child, I love my mother. It goes beyond that. So it's a feeling you're trying to convey. And equally, think of something like disappointment, right? Again, that's a feeling. Frustration is a feeling. So with feeling comes a great amount of meaning and a great depth and weight to the idea that's trying to be conveyed. This is why we say you have to be an Arya to be able to explain Nibbana to somebody else. See, again, Nibbana, if you took a book on Abhidhamma or even Tripitaka, someone asked you what's Nibbana, you can refer to the appropriate paragraph or the appropriate sutra or perhaps the appropriate verse in maybe even the Dhammapada and say this is what Nibbana is. You'd be able to quote the Tripitaka and say this is what Nibbana is. But that would be a very technical description. And if someone asked you, well, can you explain it in your own words? That might be a struggle if you don't understand it. And this is also why what we say when someone attains the fruit that is Sotapanna, they're able to describe Nibbana in over 1,000 different ways. So in Tripitaka, this is described in the verse or in the phrase Dahasak 9 Pratimandita. Dahasak being 1,000, 9 or Nyayan is theories, Pratimanda is to be endowed. So when you are a Sotapanna, when you become a Sotapanna, you are endowed with this wisdom that enables you to describe Nirvana in a multitude of ways. The word 1,000 is used, or the number 1,000 is used, but that's just a nominal number. You could look at a glass of water and explain Nibbana through a glass of water. You could look at a leaf on a tree. You could look at a brick on a wall, or you could look at a clock and describe Nibbana to somebody. But you can only do this if you really understand it and really comprehend the meaning and the feeling behind it. You'll also remember that when there was a time when I'm trying to not recall the name of this Brahmin who had a son. I'm sure the name will come to me a bit later, but I'll give you the story anyway. I just can't remember the name at this moment in time. There was a Brahmin and his son. Now this Brahmin was a great fan of the Lord Buddha, and he wanted his son to follow in his footsteps. He wanted his son to, because his son was looking forward to a very material life. He wanted to work hard, no harm in that. He wanted to accrue wealth, be prosperous, but in a very worldly, mundane way. Now this Brahmin who was able to come across, or had the good fortune to come across the Lord Buddha before, wanted his son to follow in his footsteps. And so when the son comes and asks him, Father, can you give me your wealth? Can you give me whatever it is that you have for me? My heritage. Can you give me what I'm owed? Then the father said, first you go visit the Lord Buddha, and when he preaches you the Dhamma, I want you to remember what he says and then come back and tell me whatever it is that he said. So this young man is very keen. Naturally, as far as he's concerned, he's been asked to do a very simple thing. Go visit the Buddha. The Buddha is going to preach to him. He's going to teach him some Dhamma, and all he has to do is to remember it and then come back and relate that to his father. So he's feeling confident now. So he sets forth, he goes and meets the Buddha, and he venerates the Buddha, sits down and listens to the Dhamma, and then the Buddha teaches him the Dhamma, he gives him the discourse, and then the young man gets up and venerates the Buddha again, and now he's on his way back. But the Buddha on this occasion sees that this young man is fortunate enough to understand the Dhamma. So this is where the distinction is between knowing something and understanding something, right? I'm trying to get this message across to you clearly before I get into the core of what I want to talk to you today, which is suffering. So the Buddha makes a determination, and he is and he's wanting this young man to remember the meaning of what has been said by the Buddha, but not remember the words. So he's wanting this young man to be able to feel the meaning. He's wanting this young man to be able to understand the meaning of what was said by the Lord Buddha, to be able to comprehend the meaning. behind the words, but forget the words. He actually wants this young man to forget the words, the very words. So the Lord Buddha now makes this determination, and when the young man goes back to his father, and the father now asks him the question, have you been to see the Buddha today? Yes, I have. Okay, so what did he tell you today? What did he teach you? And now this young man, he was very confident until this point. He was very confident because he's wanting to get what he's asking his father. He's wanting his money, his wealth, and yet he's now struggling. He's struggling because he's unable to remember any of the words that the Lord Buddha preached to him. So he's trying really hard. He's thinking, he's looking up and down, left and right. He's thinking, it was only today, it was just a few hours ago. I was sat in front of the Lord Buddha. He was preaching to me. There was nobody else there. It was just me. I was paying perfect attention, and yet I can't remember a single word he said. So this baffles him, and he's confused. He's really trying hard. He's thinking, surely I must remember at least one word. I've got to, because that was the purpose of my visit. All I wanted to do was to go meet with the Buddha. I didn't care what he had to say. I just wanted to remember a few words of what he was saying, and then come back and relate that to my father. And provided I'm able to do that, I'm able to get from him his money, wealth. So he's trying to remember, but unfortunately he's not able to remember a single word. So he then says, Father, I'm really sorry. I'm not able to remember anything, but do not worry. I'm going to go back tomorrow, and tomorrow I'm going to, without a shadow of a doubt, remember everything that the Lord Buddha preaches to me, and I'll come back and tell you. And the father says, yeah, sure, let's do that. So the following day, he visits the Buddha again. He venerates the Buddha, sits by his side, and then now the Buddha starts preaching again. So the Buddha preaches the Dhamma, and again, as he did the previous day, he makes a determination, and that determination is, may you remember the meaning of these words, but not the words themselves. And now I remember, his name was Kala. His name was Kala. So in the Tripitaka, you will see his name as Kala Situputra. Situputra because he was a son of Situtuma. A Situtuma was someone like a minister in today's day. Okay, so you can imagine as him as being the son of a minister. So very influential back in the day. Very powerful, had a lot of money, came from a good family. And you can imagine, he would have probably had a good education, very hard-working young man, very successful, and all he's wanting is to get ahead in life and make the most and the best of what he's got, and obviously to get from his father whatever is rightfully his. So there's nothing immoral there, no problems there. But what his father is employing is a trick. All the father wants him to do is to understand the Dhamma, and then through that understanding realize that pursuing material wealth, material success, as he had done in his lifetime, is not going to do a lot of good for Kala. So this is what the father is wanting his son to appreciate, but the son has other plans. But obviously when the son visits the Lord Buddha is able to penetrate into this young man's mind and analyze his mental ability, and therefore appreciate that this young man is very wise, provided he listens to the Dhamma for long enough and he understands the Dhamma, he's going to be able to attain Margapala. And that's what the Buddha is trying to do. So the second day after his visit to the Lord Buddha, Kala goes back to his father, and now, as he had done before, the father asks him, "Oh Kala, so you're back again, so what did the Lord Buddha teach you today?" And then Kala says, "Oh yes, father, so I was sat with the Buddha and he taught me, actually I can't remember what he taught me. That's really strange. I was only there a couple of hours ago and there was nobody else. He preached to me and we had a very useful, meaningful conversation. He was preaching the Dhamma to me, I was asking him questions, and yet I can't remember a single word he said. This is really bizarre." But remember, this is the second day that he's been to the Buddha. So on the first day, on his visit, he had no faith or conviction in him of the Lord Buddha, the Dhamma, or the Sangha. But this is the second day. And on the second day, he's obviously listened to the Dhamma and he's becoming a little bit more open-minded. He's beginning to like the Buddha. He's beginning to see that the Buddha has something important. This message that he's saying is a really important message, and it's a powerful message. But he hasn't clicked yet, as in he's not become a Sotapanna yet. So, as a final attempt, he says, "Father, I'm really disappointed with myself that it's the second day that I'm having to give you this bad news, which is the fact that I can't remember a word the Lord Buddha said, but I give you my word, I'm going to go back tomorrow, and if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to remember what he said, just one line at least, and come back and relate that to you." And the father says, "Yeah, sure, take your time, I'm in no rush." So on the third day, Kala sets out. He goes and meets the Lord Buddha. He venerates the Lord Buddha and sits by his side, and again engages in a discussion. So he asks the Buddha to preach him some Dhamma, because remember, his intention is, let me remember just one line of this Dhamma, go back and relate it to my father, and that'll be it. So again, on the third day, the Buddha is preaching the Dhamma, and now the Buddha is able to see that on the first day, the second day, and now on the third day, Kala is listening to this Dhamma, and his 5 faculties, which is Shraddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Prajna. So Shraddha being conviction, which is based in faith to a certain extent. Okay, Virya, which is your effort, how much effort you are putting into this. Satya, which is your mindfulness, how much you are mindful about your thoughts, about what is being taught. Samadhi, your level of concentration, and Prajna, wisdom. So these are the 5 faculties one needs to develop to attain Margapala. Now, as you may know, the Buddha had a special power called the Indriya Paro Pariyatta Jnana. Indriya Paro Pariyatta Jnana. So Indriya being faculty. So it's these 5 faculties: Shraddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Prajna. Paro means others. Pariyatti means to be able to examine. Jnana is knowledge. So what is this knowledge that he has? He has the knowledge to, or this special power is probably a better way to put it. He has a special power to examine any person whatsoever, any being even, humans, devas, brahmas, look into them, penetrate their mental capability, and analyze the level of Shraddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Prajna that they have. I mean, to me, that itself brings an enormous amount of happiness to my heart just thinking about the fact that the Lord Buddha was able to do that. It brings an enormous amount of faith and an enormous amount of conviction to my heart. Because we've got to remind ourselves why the Lord Buddha does this. You know, whether someone comes and meets him as a friend, I'm not talking about from the Lord Buddha's perspective, because he didn't have any friends as such. That doesn't mean to say he was an enemy of everyone, but he doesn't associate people as friends, like you and I do. He doesn't have enemies either. All he's interested in is, can I preach some Dhamma to this person? How can I help this person understand the Dhamma and therefore put an end to this suffering? That's all he's interested in. Can you begin to imagine how much compassion there must have been in him? Whether that was a Deva who would ascend from, or descend even from the heavens, come and meet the Buddha, venerate him like there was no tomorrow, sit down beside him, sing his praises, and then ask him a question with the sole intention of trying to understand how to eradicate raga, dvesha, moha in their own minds, or whether it was someone the Lord Buddha went to meet himself, sometimes on foot, sometimes the destitute people who had no hope whatsoever. He would go on foot and go looking for these people, find them, try and stop them from committing sins, sometimes grievous sins, which if they committed, they would no longer be able to attain Margapala. Why did he do that? And sometimes when he would come across people, Yakkas, Devas, Brahmas, who because of their ego, super ego, they would think that they know better than the Lord Buddha, and they would come to argue with him, they would come to debate with him, they would come to hurt him, sometimes destroy him. And all the Buddha is thinking is, how can I give this person, this being, some Dhamma? How can I open their eyes so that they may attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana? How can I prevent them from committing this sin so that they don't have to go suffer in the hells? Can you imagine how much compassion there was in that heart? This is why it's difficult to think about the Lord Buddha, appreciate his qualities, without it bringing a tear to one's eye. Certainly when you have a deep devotion towards him, when your level of compassion goes beyond a certain point, just the thought of him, just the thought of how much compassion, how much wisdom, how much effort he put in to bring us this happiness, this bliss that is Nibbana, to put an end to our suffering, for no gain on his part. What did he gain by showing Angulimala, or by preventing Angulimala from committing matricide? What did he gain out of it? Nothing. What did he gain out of having that conversation with Alavaka and subduing his ego and his anger and opening his eyes to the Dhamma, what did he gain out of it? Absolutely nothing. So why did he do that? He did it out of pure compassion. See, this is why we call the Buddha Amamaniam Lansa. Mani's mother. Think about your mother. To a mother, a child is faultless. No matter what they do, no matter what bad they do, what evil they commit, a mother is always ready to welcome their child, take them into her arms, and protect them from the world, from his or her enemies. Even if someone commits a grievous sin, a mother is always prepared to protect their child, to prevent further harm from coming to their child. And such is the compassion of a Lord Buddha. But he does that for any and every being there ever was, that he ever came across. To him, all beings are his children. That's how much compassion there was within him. So, coming back to the story of Kala. So now the Buddha is able to penetrate Kala's mental capacity, and he's able to analyze how much Shraddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Prajna that Kala possesses, and how these faculties are being cultivated, how they're developing from the first day he met. It's now the third day, and over that period of time he's seeing, he's developing these faculties, and today he's come to a point that he's going to attain the Sotapanna Phala. So he continues his sermon, and at one point Kala attains Sotapanna Phala. Kala understands suffering as a noble truth. He understands the cause for suffering as a noble truth. He understands the cessation of suffering as a noble truth, and he understands the path to the cessation of suffering as a noble truth. And with that, he opens his eyes. He gets a fresh perspective, a new perspective on life, and on how to put an end to this rebirth cycle. So he becomes a Sotapanna. Now he's heading back home. There is no need now for the Lord Buddha to once again make this determination that Kala should forget what has been taught, because the Lord Buddha has done his job. He's achieved what he wanted to, which was to liberate Kala from samsara, to give him the key to unlock the door. So Kala now heads back home. He goes and meets his father, and now he's having a very different conversation to the one he had the previous 2 days. And now he says to his father, "Dear father, up until now I troubled you. I was always behind your back, asking you for wealth, for material possession, for your belongings. I was asking you for land, I was asking you for money, I was asking you for vehicles, because that's what I wanted, that's what I thought would give me happiness. And yet today, having met the Buddha for the third time, today I understand that none of that is what's going to bring me happiness. Dear father, I no longer want your wealth, I no longer want I no longer want your vehicles, I no longer want your land. I don't want any of that. what I want to do now is to fulfill this path that the Lord Buddha gave me and attain my arahantship. I want to end this rebirth cycle. You see, this is what his father wanted. And at that point the father was very happy. Not because he now didn't need to pass his wealth down to his son. I mean, who else would he pass his wealth down to? But because he realized that no amount of wealth, no amount of land, no amount of material possession is going to bring his son ultimate happiness. No amount of material possession is going to bring his son a level of happiness that is never ending. No amount of money is going to put an end to his journey in samsara and therefore end this painful experience of rebirth. So this is another example of how understanding something is different to remembering or knowing something. So I want to relate that story to you so that you can clearly understand the difference between these two. Now, as I said at the start, I've been reflecting, I've been thinking about why, despite, and we discussed this a few minutes ago, why despite so much Dhamma being available in today's day and age, and people so proactively engaging in a meritorious life, so there are plenty of flower offerings, there are plenty of oil lamp offerings, there are plenty of incense stick offerings to the Lord Buddha, to the Dhamma, to the Mahasangha, alms offerings. Sometimes people do once every month, twice a month, sometimes on every Poya day, right? And also people listen to a lot of Dhamma these days. But despite all of that, they don't have the level of understanding, not knowledge, because people seem to have a lot of knowledge today about the Buddha Dhamma, but not as much of an understanding. Because what is the true measure of one's understanding of the Dhamma? Actually, ask yourself that question. How do you tell if someone has understood the Dhamma? Do you give them a test? Do you give them a question paper with real difficult questions about the Buddha Dhamma, about Paticca, about the Four Noble Truths? Is that how you measure someone's understanding of the Dhamma? Or do you question them on the material in the Tripitaka or in the in the Jataka Pota? Well, again, that's knowledge. Because today you have professors in Buddhism, but have they really understood the message? I mean, sometimes there are monks, members of the Mahasangha, who preach the Dhamma, who have a lot of knowledge in the Dhamma, but how much have they actually understood the Dhamma? What is the real measure? What's the real metric? The real measure, the real metric is actually how much you have been able to let go. How much have you been able to let go? That is the one true deterministic factor. That's the one true and clear measure of how much one has understood the Dhamma. How much have you been able to let go? Whether it's money, whether it's your children, whether it's your parents, your friends, your relatives, your hobbies, your favorite TV channels, your favorite cartoon characters, your toys, your cars, your property, if you have cattle, if you have land, and even sometimes things that are not so material. What about ideas? Opinions. How much can you let go? Some people are very opinionated. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying, these are things that people hold fast to. Some people have the opinion that a certain person is the best candidate, or the best candidate for an election, at an election, or the best person to be the country's leader. Some people have an opinion that, if you think back to many years ago, some people have the opinion that women should have equal rights. Even today you have that. Again, I re-emphasize, I'm not saying that is wrong. All I'm saying is it's an opinion. Some people have opinions that all people should be treated equal. Again, these are all opinions. And some people are on the other end of the spectrum. If you take Hitler, for example, Adolf Hitler, he had a very strong opinion. Wouldn't you agree? But how much was he able to let go of that opinion? What opinions do you hold fast to? So, as I said, there are things, material things that we hold fast to, that we hold so closely and dearly. There are people that we hold fast to, that we can't let go of, whose distancing causes a great deal of suffering and pain. And then there are incidents. What do I mean by that? Let's take, for example, let's take a wave, waves in the ocean. So, or a waterfall, for example. Actually, a waterfall is a good example. Or perhaps rain. Right? Some people really like rain. They really enjoy that experience. People really enjoy a waterfall. You look at a waterfall and it's not static. A static waterfall to that person is not as appealing, because otherwise they'll just have a picture of it and enjoy that. But no, people actually want to go to a waterfall, go stand by it, and then appreciate it. Or perhaps a river, or the waves in the ocean. These are all incidents, things that happen, and people are very fond of it. And then also opinions. People hold fast to. So, one's understanding of Dhamma and or the measure of how much one has understood the Dhamma is actually how much one has been able to let go of that opinion, of how strongly they hold fast onto that material object, another person, or that incident. So, coming back to the original question, despite us talking about dukkha satya, dukkha arya satya, time and time again, we still seem to, or we find it really difficult to let go I mean, if you ask someone, what brings you suffering, then sometimes people say, well, it's the things that they say it's tanha that brings me suffering. It's attachment that brings me suffering. But I think what I'm sensing is that, again, that's just a very superficial knowing. It's knowledge. It's knowledge that tanha brings suffering. It's knowledge that attachment brings suffering. So tanha jayati soko, a lot of the time people just take as knowledge. It's just another fact. Just like the sun is hot, or the moon just reflects the sun's light. That's a fact. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. That's a fact. There are 20 million people in Sri Lanka, population. That's a fact. So just like that, people remember factual data, factual information, and they don't really give much thought about the meaning behind it. Let's take a computer. If you take a computer, the hard disk of a computer, or a supercomputer, how much data do you think sits in there? Sometimes you have gigabytes and terabytes and petabytes of data, exabytes of data. That's a lot of data. If you think about the internet is nothing more than all of the data that sits in all of the devices connected to the internet, networked in such a way that one computer is able to access the data on another computer. That's information, that's fact. But how do you give meaning to that data? That's where you need a human being. You give data to that human being, they process that data, they try and relate it to other bits of data, and then you get information out of that. So likewise, come to think of it, it looks like dukkha arya satya has just become a fact. Attachment causes suffering has just become a fact. We seem to be, it seems to roll off our tongues so easily. But when there's the real test of have you really understood that, which is how much have you let go, the answer is very little. Think about your favorite TV program. If I asked you to stop watching it from today, would you be able to do it? What about your favorite cartoon program? If I asked you to stop watching it from today, okay, not forever, for 1 month, okay, 2 weeks, if it's a weekly program, can you do that? If you're feeling uncomfortable at the thought of it, is that not because you're attached to it? Is that not because you are unable to let go? What about your best friend? If I said to you, can you not talk to your best friend for a month? Can you do that? I'm not saying go and do this. I'm just asking you to think about this. Ask yourself the question. What about your favorite dish? Your favorite food? Some people, for some people it's pizza, sausages, fried rice, biryani, whatever the case might be. Rice and curry for some person, for someone. For some people it's their morning tea. Right? Without the morning tea I can't function. There are some people like that. if you have a real understanding of the Dhamma, and the measure of how much that is true is how much you are able to let go. Can you think of your most favorite thing? That could be your favorite item of clothing in your wardrobe. It could be your favorite computer game. It could be your iPad, your mobile phone, your favorite TV program, your best friend, your hobby. Are you able to stop associating it for a period of time, 1 month? Are you? Now if you go around publicly telling other people, this is, look at this Dhamma that I have found, I'm seeing that I'm progressing and working my way towards Nibbana. Where's the practical application of it? Because remember, I always tell you, 20% theory, 80% application. So where's practical application? Your practical application is, how much have I let go? How much can I let go? Because no matter how much Dhamma you listen to, if you can't let go, then you haven't understood the Dhamma. You may have a lot of knowledge, you may understand the facts, you may even be able to recite the Paticcasamuppada, you may be able to recite the entire Tripitaka, but how much are you able to let go? There are plenty of stories from the Buddha's time where he didn't really appreciate someone spending time trying to acquire knowledge. In fact, at times he would insult people. Remember the story of Portila? There was a monk called Portila in the time of the Buddha. So Portila once came to visit the Lord Buddha, worshipped him, sat down beside him, and the Buddha is now sat, and they're not looking eye to eye, but the Buddha's sat on one side, and Portila, Venerable, so this monk is now saying, "Oh, Venerable Sir, I think you'll be very happy to hear this." The Buddha is not replying, and Portila says, "I know the entire Tripitaka. I'm a master of the Tripitaka. So I understand the 3 canons, the book of discipline, Vinaya Pitaka, the book of discourses, the Sutra Pitaka, and the book of Abhidhamma Pitaka. So I am a master of the Tripitaka, and not just in this birth. Many times before, I have been a disciple in the Lord Buddha's order, monastic order, as a monk, and I have been a master of the Tripitaka many times over. And even today, I am able to recite the entire Tripitaka, and I am able to help a lot of monks, my fellow monks, in their practice, to help them attain Margapala. So now you can imagine Portila sat next to the Lord Buddha, and he is giving this kind of a self so he's talking about himself. He's saying, this is what I've been able to do, and this is what I'm doing today. He's singing praises of himself, really. It's just blowing his own trumpet, okay? Now, he said his plot, and now he's still not getting a response from the Lord Buddha. He waits there for a few moments, and then because he's not getting any response from the Lord Buddha, he's clearly very confused. He doesn't understand why the Lord Buddha is not appreciating all that he's doing, and so he gets up and he's ready to walk away. At which point the Lord Buddha asks him, "Tucca Potila, you leaving? Are you leaving?" So tucca is a word that is used as an insult. So tucca is a word that is used in Sinhala, and also there would have been the equivalent in Pali, used back then, and it's a word used to insult someone. It's a word used to insult someone when they're doing something that is useless, that is worthless. Please don't use it in public. So he's used this word to insult Potila, and now Potila is clearly shocked. He doesn't understand this. He's thinking, I've done so much for the Buddha Shasana. I've learned the Tripitaka by heart. I'm able to recite all 3 canons of the Tripitaka. I've done this many times before in the time of previous Buddhas. So you see, he's even developed his concentration, his samadhi, which is how he's able to reflect on his previous births. By, to be able to do that, you need to at least be able to attain the 4th jhana, to be able to get this knowledge, this power, which is Pubbhe Nivasa Anusati Jnane, to be able to see your past births. So clearly Potila has done that, and he's seen that many times in the past, in the time of the previous Buddhas, he did the same. He learned the Tripitaka by heart, and he helped other monks to attain Nibbana. And he's doing that today as well, in the era of Gautama Samma Sambuddha. And yet the Buddha does not have one word to appreciate his efforts, let alone appreciation. He's actually insulting him. So then he asks the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, why is it that you insult me? I was explaining to you how much good I've done. I was telling you I've done this many times in the past. I've helped my brethren, my fellow monks to attain Nibbana, to attain Margapala, and I'm doing the same in your Shasana. Why is it that you insult me by calling me Tucca?" And the Lord Buddha says in reply, "Potila, you've done this plenty of times before, in the time of the previous Buddhas. You've been learning the Tripitaka by heart and helping other people do what they needed to do. What have you done for yourself? When are you going to gain the fruits? When are you going to reap what you sow? Because all you've been doing is sowing the seed, and then when you reap the harvest, you just give it away. When are you going to make use of it?" At this moment, Potila comes to his senses. He realizes what's wrong with his ways, and it is said that he then goes looking for a teacher, in deep disgust of himself and of what he's been doing all this time. He realizes, the Lord Buddha is right. I've been wasting my time. I've been coming through samsara, going through this painful experience of samsara. Why did I become a monk? I became a monk to put an end to this samsara. Sabba dukkha nissarana, nibbana satchikaranatthaya. That's why I became a monk. Sabba dukkha nissarana, to put an end to all suffering. But what is it I'm doing today? What is it I've been doing all this time? I've been teaching other people what I've learned. So clearly, what we need to take from the story is there's a clear distinction between knowledge, because he had plenty of that. Remember, he was a master of the Tripitaka, but he had not attained even the first Margapala or Sotapanna. So what had he gained for himself? So clearly there was no understanding. He was not able to let go. So this is why it's important then to understand the difference. Clearly we see there is a difference, but why are we in the same place? And I think it's because if you take, to give a metaphor, imagine one standing on solid ground and they're walking about, and then one day someone comes to them and says, do you not realize that actually you're standing on a bed of nails? A bed of nails. So there's nails pointing upwards. They're pricking your feet. Do you not realize you're standing on a bed of nails? Why don't you step away? Or even, they don't even ask that question. They just say, do you not realize you're standing on a bed of nails? This person then replies, what do you mean? And the other person goes, well, look down and you'll see. So this person then looks at their, looks towards their feet and then realizes that what he's been told is actually true. He's standing on a bed of nails. His feet are thoroughly wounded, they're bleeding, they're swollen, they've become infected. But he hasn't realized that. He hadn't realized this all this time because he was far too busy looking up, looking around, looking at other people who were also standing on this bed of nails. Far too busy to look down at his feet, look around him, look towards the ground and realize that actually this ground that he's standing on is nothing but a bed of nails. But now that his eyes have been opened to this reality, what do you think he does at that point? What do you think? Does he need prompting? Imagine if someone came to him before this revelation, someone comes to him before, say the day before, and says, hey, why don't you step over there? And he points at a place where there are no nails, so it's just plain ground. What would this person say? He would say, well, why should I? I'm perfectly fine here. I'm feeling alright. I'm comfortable. Why should I? Remember, this is all he's ever known. He was born into this world on a bed of nails. For as long as he's been alive, he's been stood on this bed of nails. And that's all his feet has ever known. That's all he's ever known, to stand on a bed of nails. He's never experienced standing on plain ground. So he can't relate to that. So when someone says, hey, why don't you just step on over there where there's plain ground, without mentioning the fact that you're actually stood on a bed of nails, the response you can expect from him is, no, I'm perfectly fine here, thank you very much. Because you see, you're not going to see why playing ground is the better place to be if you don't see a problem with where you are right now. So that man, as long as he's blind to the fact that he's on a bed of nails that are hurting his feet, that are pricking his feet every time he moves around, every step he takes, it cuts his feet. And there are plenty of wounds on his feet, and they are now infected. His feet are swollen. They're bleeding. But he doesn't realize this because he hasn't known any different. And even when someone points at solid ground, plain ground, and says, why don't you step over there? He's not feeling the need to do that because he doesn't see what's so special about it. Why? Because he has nothing to compare it to. Certainly there's nothing that's apparent to him. It's not apparent to him because he's not looking at where he stood at this moment in time. So when this other person the following day comes and says, hey, do you realize you're stood on a bed of nails? Do you realize that your feet are cut and that every time you move around on this bed of nails, these nails makes a fresh cut and you bleed even more? Do you realize that your feet are infected with all the bleeding and they never heal, because every time they begin to heal it's a fresh cut again because you move around? Now, if this man took a moment to look down and realize the fact that actually he is actually stood on a bed of nails, what do you think crosses his mind? What thoughts do you think rush through his mind? Do you not think he's going to think about the other friend who came to him before and asked him to step over to the other side where there was just plain ground? You know, before he didn't have any value for it. When he was asked to move over to plain ground, he would question the intention. He would question, well, why is it you're asking me to do this? What's the point? How can I even trust you? How do I even know that although you're saying plain ground is comfortable over there, how do I know that? You see, I had a similar experience. So, a couple of weeks ago, while I was in the monastery, one day in the evening, late evening, I think it was around 8 o'clock, half 8 in the night, a bunch of teenagers, they came over, about 5 of them. So they sat in front of me and another monk, and so he's asking me this question. He's saying, Swami, I believe in the Lord Buddha, but I can't understand, I can't seem to compute, I can't seem to make sense of Nibbana. I don't believe Nibbana exists. As in, I'm not talking about a place here. He's saying, I don't think Nibbana is something that someone can achieve. I believe in Lord Buddha, but I don't believe in Nibbana. Isn't what this guy is saying very similar to what this person that stood on a bed of nails was saying to his friend when he came and said, stand away, get out of there, come and stand on this plain ground and it's not going to hurt your feet. He's not seeing the answer to the problem because why? He's not seeing what? The problem. If you're not seeing the problem, the answer to the problem is not apparent. It doesn't You're not looking at it as the answer to a problem. Again, I'll give you a very simple example. I give you 2 sheets of paper. On one sheet of paper, I write down several numbers. So I have the number 2, so at random, I have the number 4, the number 5, number 9. Okay, so I have a bunch of numbers on one sheet of paper. I give it to you, and you're looking at it going, so what? Why have you just given me this sheet full of numbers? And it's a perfectly valid question. I then give you another sheet of paper on which I have written this equation: 5 plus 4 equals. What do you think you do at that point? You go back to the first sheet of paper and you remember, there was 2, there was 4, there was 5, 6, and then there was 9. Now the number 9 has meaning to it. Now the number 9 is of value. The next time you look at that sheet of paper, the number 9 has a lot more significance than all of the other numbers on that sheet of paper. What do you think? Am I right? It's because you have the problem and now you're looking at the solution. Before you had the problem, before you knew what the problem was, the solution was not obvious. As in, the information was out there, but it was never apparent as a solution to a problem. You see, I think I've mentioned this before. The Buddha did not invent Nibbana. He did not invent the first noble truth, that is Dukkha Arya Satya. He did not invent the second noble truth, which is Dukkha Samudaya Arya Satya. He did not invent the third or the fourth noble truth. It was not his invention. What did he do though? He was an explorer. Think of any other explorer or someone that goes on discovery. What does an explorer do? They go exploring lands. Think about trying to think of a name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Think about people in the past who've gone traveling on sea, looking for new land. That bit of land existed even before that person came and set foot on it. But what did this person do? He discovered it and then made it open, made it known to other people. Hey guys, did you know that there's this bit of land here that can be used for cultivation, for settling down, for herding your cattle, so on and so forth. But that land existed even before that person discovered it. Right? What about bacteria? Didn't bacteria exist before it was discovered? What about electricity? In the form of lightning. Did that not exist before it was discovered? So all of these things existed before they were discovered. There were certain things that were invented. So there's a clear distinction between inventing something and discovering something. So for example, a car was invented. But fire wasn't invented, it was discovered. You don't invent fire, you discover fire. You don't invent land, you discover land. Whereas a computer was invented because it didn't exist before. You go and you apply your knowledge of of the world and how it works. You apply your analytical knowledge, wisdom, and you make something out of nothing. That's an invention. Whereas dukkha Arya Satya, dukkha samudaya Arya Satya, dukkha nirodha Arya Satya, and dukkha nirodha gamini patipadya Arya Satya, none of these were inventions. Because remember, all of the Buddhas before Gautama Samma Sambuddha discovered the same truths. All of them taught the same Four Noble Truths. But what happens is, after the era of a Lord Buddha, these truths are hidden. People stop talking about it, people stop practicing the Dhamma, and then it goes out of general use. And then when you have the last Arya pass away, then the Four Noble Truths are no longer available to this world. At that point, you need a Samma Sambuddha to be born into this world and then discover the Four Noble Truths, and then preach the Four Noble Truths to other people who become Aryas, and then start propagating that again. So this dukkha Arya Satya is something that needs to be discovered. So we find that we are attached to things. We listen to the Dhamma, but we are unable to let go. And therefore, the distinction there should be that we still haven't discovered for ourselves. This is why, or the reason for this, I think, is because day-to-day life, again going back to the person stood on the bed of nails, they're not seeing the problem, and therefore even when the solution is right in front of their eyes, they're not seeing it as a solution to the problem. Okay, so again, think of a time when people, if you go back many years, many hundreds of years, I'm sure there would have been a time when people didn't use any shoes or any footwear. Okay, but they would have seen bits of tree, bits of old pieces of cloth maybe, or bits of skin that are dried up, that could potentially have been used as footwear, but just looking at it doesn't become the solution unless you have the problem. But once you understand that there is a problem and you understand the cause for the problem, then what happens? The solution becomes obvious. So the Lord Buddha did something very similar. This is why the first noble truth is always dukkha Arya Satya, because you have to understand the problem. Once you understand the problem, then the cause for the problem becomes obvious. Once you understand the cause for the problem, then the solution to the problem becomes obvious. Once you understand the solution to the problem, then the path to implement the solution becomes obvious. I want to build a house. Why do I need a house? I need shelter. I need water. I need to protect myself from the elements. I need a bedroom so I can sleep. I need a living room so I can entertain my guests. I need a kitchen so I can cook my food. So all of these are problems and the causes for the problem. So then what's the solution? I need to build a house. I need something that takes away the problem. So I need a house. Well, I need some kind of shelter. And then the path to the cessation of the problem becomes, let's go meet with an architect and start drawing up a plan. What does a house look like? What's it made of? All of these answers become obvious at that point. So I'm trying to draw a reference here, because the reason that although we talk about dukkha all the time, we listen to all these dhammas, we practice meditation, it's got to be clear then, it's got to be obvious then, that the reason we still haven't been able to let go is because we're not seeing the problem clearly. I'll give you another example. Think of someone that's a heavy smoker. A heavy smoker feels it's perfectly fine to do that, and they continue smoking until one day they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, hey, you've got this, we've just done the scan and it looks like you've got lung cancer. Now letting go becomes so much easier. Previously there was no need to do it. There wasn't, think about it, right? What do you think was discovered first? Lung cancer or smoking? So lung cancer was discovered, smoking was invented, right? Lung cancer was discovered, smoking was invented. Which do you think came first? I bet it was smoking that came first. People wanted some kind of recreation, a way to recreate, a way to have a laugh with their friends when they get together, do something common. Because this is one of those things I think you'll find in psychology. People like to find their equals, because then it's easy to match. Because when you're with someone that's less than you, what I mean by that is in terms of social standing, you don't quite feel like you fit. Really simple example. Think of a time when you've gone out with your colleagues and everyone there is your junior. So you are the most senior person, everyone else is your junior. Isn't there a tiny tinge of, I don't quite fit in this social circle? Do you not feel that? Do you not feel like I have to conduct myself in a certain way? Are you not always mindful of, a lot more mindful than you would otherwise be about what you say, how you conduct yourself, because you're thinking, everyone's looking at me, and they're going to take me as an exemplary. And also the opposite is true as well. When everyone you're out with is your senior, so you're the most junior person, again you're thinking, well, everyone's still watching me and I've got to behave myself, because one wrong word can result in serious consequences. I could lose my job, for example. But what if when you're with your equals, when everyone there is your peer? Now that's a much more comfortable environment. So when people got together, they wanted to find a way to make people feel that they were equals. So they started smoking, because when everyone's smoking, well, now you are a social circle and you're all doing the same thing. It's like your book circle. your book club, right? In a book club, everyone gets together, everyone's interested in books, and you're feeling happy. You're feeling, we're all part of the same thing. Or, if you're taking drinks, I'm talking about alcohol, right? Again, you get together, everyone's taking a drink, and you're all feeling like we're all part of the same gang. But the guy that's not taking a drink is feeling a bit awkward. He's feeling, I am feeling a bit awkward here, perhaps I should just take my leave. Or the guy that's wanting a drink when everyone else isn't drinking, again they feel awkward. So again, point there being, these things get invented so that people feel equal. Again, that's relief for a type of suffering. Remember how we've always said, happiness is when you get relief for suffering. Pleasure and satisfaction can only be sought when you find relief when you're suffering. So if not being among your equals brings a level of tension into your minds, then people will undoubtedly look for a solution to that problem. So anyway, I was sidetracking there. Coming back to my question before. So I think smoking was invented first, and then came lung cancer, was discovered. So when smoking was invented, people did that, so people smoked, and then there was the treatment for lung cancer. I think there are quite a few natural remedies that exist. Well, I don't know if they cure lung cancer. People, some people say, but I think there's a drug called quinine I've heard of. I don't know how much it cures lung cancer. As far as I know, cancer cannot be cured, but that might just be my ignorance. But at least, let's assume it helps relieve the symptoms. Well, sorry, cancer can be cured, but that's by doing various therapies. You do various surgeries, and you cut the bit of tissue that is cancerous. What I think is still not able to be done with our current understanding of science is to treat the cancerous cells so that they revert to their normal state. I don't think that's still possible. You can cure the cancer by actually removing that bit out of the body. That's what I meant. So anyway, this is not a science lesson. Let's go back to our discussion about the treatment. So if, as far as I know, quinine is a naturally occurring plant, or a product or a byproduct of a certain plant, and that exists. But that, people don't give it value until they realize that I've now got a problem, that is cancer, and then all of a sudden quinine has great value. I mean, think about rubber trees, tea trees, or tree plantations. Today they're grown in mass, but back when people didn't have a use for it, rubber trees would have just grown in the wild and people wouldn't have cared one bit about it. But today they're of great value. So coming back to the point, that the important point we're trying to make here, no matter how much we invest our time in trying to teach people about Nibbana, no matter how much people go and invest time in meditation, spend time in classes, learn about Abhidhamma, all of that is going to be pretty much all but knowledge, unless you understand clearly, fully, what the problem is. And you're not going to be able to let go unless you understand what the problem is, why attaching yourself is the cause for the problem. So the cause for the problem being attachment, what's the problem? I think that's where we need to start. Think about the things that have, and again, this can be understood by reflecting on your own experiences. You don't need to go very far for this. Think about your own life experiences. This is why I always say, you don't attain Nibbana by looking at someone else's life. You attain Nibbana by understanding your own life and applying the 20% that you learn into the 80% application, and that is through your life. Okay? So you understand, you look at the things that you have associated yourself with throughout your lifetime. Think about, let's take it from the time you start life. You start life as a young child, growing up, right? You have your toys. Now, when you had your toys, sorry, excuse me one moment. Sorry, there was a brief interruption there. I'm back now. So we were saying, think of your childhood and when you were attached to your toys and you were very fond of them. Now, it's easy for someone to think that toys bring happiness. A young child today even might look at their toys and say, that's my favorite toy. I'm using this example because I know we have quite a few young listeners. This is a challenge I'm often trying to balance, because I know we have a quite range of ages. We have from the very young to elderly listeners. So try and cater to all audiences, or at least most audiences. So we have, if I asked a young child to go and get their favorite toy, they would go and rumble around and find their favorite car or their favorite doll, and then bring it and say, this is the toy that brings me the most amount of happiness. That's why this is my favorite toy. What is not so obvious at that point in time is this object which they regard, he or she, the child regards as their favorite object, their favorite toy, is in fact what has the potential to bring them the greatest amount of pain and the greatest amount of suffering. Is that not the case? Now, I want you to relate to yourselves. I want to relate this to yourselves. Think about, no matter what age you are, think about your most favorite object. So that could be a toy. If you're, it could be your computer, it could be your iPad, your mobile phone, it could be, if you own a car, it could be your car, your house. Think about your most favorite object. Let me put it this way. If someone came over, or if there was an announcement that said, a public announcement that said, there's going to be a nuclear bomb that's going to go off in 24 hours, or let's say in an hour's time, but you're all going to have the option to take with you one object, or to save one object, what would that be? Now, for the elderly, if you're middle-aged and above, or usually if you own a property, most of the time you'll say that's my house. But remember, you can save your house, but not anything within it. Okay? So you can't get out of that one. So if you have your television in there, if you have your sofa, your clothes, your cutlery, none of that's going to be saved. It's just one object. If it's your house, it's your house. It's not the fan you have, it's not the air conditioner you have, it's nothing inside it, not your microwave oven. For some it could be their jewelry, it could be your wedding ring, or it could be the ring that was passed down to you from a generation. If you're a young person, maybe you're in your teenagers, it could be your bike, your cycle, or it could be your iPad, your tablet, your computer. I'm thinking back to when I was a young man. There was nothing more important to me than my computer. There was a time. And if you're a young child, it could be your favorite toy. Okay? So you're asked, or you're informed that there's going to be a nuclear explosion. Everything's going to be destroyed except for the one object that you want to keep safe. What would that object be? So if you've given thought to that and you know what that one object is going to be, what if someone came and took that away from you? How would that make you feel? What if someone told you that for every moment that passes, that object is subject to decay? How does that make you feel? What if you realized that one day you're going to have to part with that object, no matter how much you liked it? How does that make you feel? Now, what if the same was said for all of the other objects, the things that you are not particularly attached to? How does that make you feel? If someone broke into your house and stole things from your house, so we talked about the nuclear explosion. Here's something you can perhaps relate to even more easily, more easily. You wake up in the morning, you realize there's been a robbery, right? What's the first thing you're going to go and check is still available? What one thing? Now, if the same fate, so imagine that was stolen, or that thing was destroyed, someone comes and takes it away from you, you haven't given it away, it's just been taken from you, how does that make you feel? And what if the same was done to things that you don't like particularly, or things that you have no particular or strong interest in? How does that make you feel? Do you see, if the answer is yes, I like this object very much, and I would want nothing, I wouldn't want anyone to take that away from me. Do you realize that it is that very object that you were attached to, that you really liked, and that object that you thought which would give you the most amount of happiness, that is also giving you now the most amount of pain, the most amount of suffering? Did the potential for that not exist right from the start? So if it's a car, right, imagine you have a Ferrari. You really like your Ferrari, it's a red Ferrari, okay, the latest model. You think this object is what gives you the most amount of happiness. Every moment you're awake, you're thinking about your Ferrari. Every time you walk into your house, if you could look through your garage, you just check, just for peace of mind, you check to make sure it's still there. You know that feeling when you first get something, your first bicycle? Every moment you walk past it, right, you just make extra sure that it's still there, unharmed. You do that, right? You do that to your Ferrari. But if that object was taken away from you, so your car was taken away from you, how does that make you feel? Now, have we not seen plenty of examples where cars are indeed stolen? Cars are indeed broken into, damaged in an accident, damaged due to natural disasters, sometimes due to your own fault. Did the potential for that unfortunate incident not exist the very moment you drove that car to the showroom? It did. The potential for that car to be stolen, to be broken into, to be damaged as a result of a natural incident, a natural disaster, always existed right from the start. But we didn't want to look into that. We didn't see that. Because all we were interested in is how this car is going to bring me happiness. And so without us knowing, without our understanding, the one thing that we thought was giving us the greatest amount of happiness, the most happiness, the one thing that we thought was the purpose of my existence, come to think of it, had the potential, or has the potential, to give me the most amount of pain and suffering. This is what the Lord Buddha said. Dukkha Arya Satya. When he says, see suffering within happiness, within comfort, this is what he meant by that. Because generally we don't attach ourselves to things that we don't see as bringing us happiness, right? So, you're attached to your house. You're not necessarily attached to your neighbor's house. In fact, some people might even dislike the neighbor's house because it looks better than yours. Okay, or it's newer than yours. Or perhaps it's more fancy than yours. You don't like it particularly. Maybe you just don't like the guy next door. So you don't like their house either, or their car. Now, no matter how good looking their house is, what model their car is, or whether it's a much more expensive car than yours, you're not attached to it. It doesn't bring you happiness. The less happiness that it brings you, the less you're going to suffer when something harmful happens to it. So if you really don't like your neighbor, and their car got into an accident, how does that make you feel? You're going to suffer, or you're going to be happy? You're probably not going to show it, lest that gets into a brawl. But you're gonna feel happy about it. You're gonna feel, they deserve it. He's a really cruel guy. He's a really bad guy. I don't like him at all. He deserved that accident. People say these things, don't they? Have you ever said something like that? Have you ever felt something like that? Have you ever thought something like that? None of these things are good things to think of, because even that thought itself is an akusala. Because it comes into vyapad, aversion, falls into aversion, which is one of the dasa akusala, and one of the dasa akusala that can take into hells. But what we're talking about here is how, the thing that you're attached to the most is what's going to bring you the most amount of pain and the most amount of suffering. Right? Now let's take a few more examples. So we talked about your favorite object. What about your favorite person? So for some it could be your mother, your father, your child, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. What if some harm comes to them? What if the same harm comes to a person that you just met on the street? You have no previous connection to them. They're just another person. It's the same harm. So say there's been an explosion, there's been bombs gone off, right? Who are you going to start thinking about? The person next door or your child? If they're both going to the same place and you've just been informed that a bomb's gone off where your child's been to, or that your neighbor's gone to the same place as well, who are you going to start worrying about? Whose pain and suffering is going to set off alarm bells in your own mind? Who are you going to lament because of? Who are you going to cry and weep on behalf of? Is it not the person that you are so attached to, you are most attached to? So do you not see how it's the person that you are most attached to, that you are most affectionate to, that the person that you love the deepest, that brings you the most amount of pain? Okay, so you're probably thinking, he's talking about this Swaminathan is talking about a bomb going off. When does that ever happen around where I live? Okay, fair enough. What about other things? What about old age? Do you know someone who's escaped old age or aging, the aging process? I'd like to know. Do you know someone that's escaped death? Would you care to introduce them to me? I'd like to find out how they managed to do that. Do you know someone that is immune to every disease there is? Do you know someone who's immune to injury, poisoning, who's immune to fire? Don't these things happen? Do you know someone who's immune to accidents on the road? Well, if you do, then surely you've got to find out how that person did all of that and then protect the person that you love the same way, shouldn't you? Well, why haven't you done that already? you realize that no matter how much you try, there's absolutely no way you can make someone immune from those things, immune to those things? You can protect someone from aging and death, disease. I mean, even the Lord Buddha suffered from diseases after he became the Buddha. So if he had to endure pain and suffering, how do you think you're going to do that? So now you're thinking about your favorite person. I'm going to remind you that actually the person you thought your favorite person was is not actually your favorite person. Because if you thought that's your child, it's your mother, your father, your best friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, think again. That's not your favorite person. Who's your favorite person? They're standing right in front of you. Go look in the mirror. That's your favorite person. How do you know? Well, it's a person that's going to bring you the most amount of pain and the most amount of suffering when something bad happens to them. See, that's the most simple way to find who it is that you love the most, who it is that you like the most, what object are you attached the most to, what one object do you like or love the most. The simple test is which object, which person is going to bring you the most amount of pain, the most amount of suffering if something bad happens to them or to it. Do you realize that that statement alone is enough for someone to realize, well, isn't the opposite true as well? Or in fact, the reverse true as well? That is, the object that I love the most, that I'm most attached to, the person that I love the most or most like or most attached to, is what or who that's going to bring me the most amount of pain and the most amount of suffering. Do we really think that all of these things and all of these people are immune to old age, disease and death? Do you not remember that the Lord Buddha says, Jati Paccha, Jara, Marana, Shoka, Parideva, Dukkha, Domanasa, Upayasa. I mean, it starts with Jati Paccha, Jara, Marana. With birth comes decay and death. When did you and I become immune to that? So the problem is, though, all's tickety-boo, all's good and handy-dandy until the moment comes when you begin to suffer. When you realize that the decaying process has become so obvious that what was good looking, what was strong and powerful is no longer what it used to be. All's nice and fancy until the person that you like the most, the thing that you like the most, has an accident, has a disease, or gets infected, or gets ill, falls sick. Now who's suffering? See, this is what the Lord Buddha taught us. Tanha jayati soko. When you're attached to something, the more you're attached to it, the more you're going to suffer as a result of it. So, is it now obvious why I decided to become a monk? Because there were 101 things There were 101 things that I was attached to as a lay person. I was attached to family. I was attached to property, my house, my job, my education, my money, my property, my land, my car. Even if I'm not mentally attached to it, I still have to sustain these things. But now, all that I have, all that I possess, are the robes that I wear, the 3 robes that I wear, and my arms bow. That's all that I have. That's all that I'm responsible for. That's all that can make me feel sad. Even then, if some harm comes to that, they get destroyed, all I need to do is go and find a replacement. Is it easier for me to replace a robe or my suit and my coat and jacket that I used to own as a lay person? Does it matter what color it is? Does it matter whether it's ironed? Does it matter whether it's pressed? Does it matter that it's not the latest fashion? Not where I am at the moment, not where I am right now, but where I used to be. All of those things mattered. Why? Because society expected those things from me. I had to keep up appearances, and to keep up appearances I had to associate and bring close to me all of these things that were around me. And every time I brought something closer to me, before I had this understanding, little did I know that the things I was bringing closer to me are the same things that's going to bring me suffering and pain. Why? Because anything that was subject to jati, anything that exists, is subject to decay and death, aging. The moment I attach myself to it, I have just planted the seed of suffering. As long as I'm not attached to it, I can use it perfectly fine, that's no problem. But the moment I'm attached to it, I've just planted the seed of suffering. So, going back to our original question and the point that we were discussing, why is it that we study about suffering so much? We talk about dukkha satya, dukkha arya satya. Why is it that people still don't feel like they can let go? Is it not because you're not seeing through, you're not looking into the future, you're not seeing the potential for this object, this person, or this incident, this occurrence to bring you suffering when you're attached to it? What about your child? Is there no potential there for you to suffer as a result of your attachment to your child? Are you sure they're immune to all types of diseases? What kind of insurance can you take to ensure that your child doesn't die young? What insurance can you take to ensure that your child doesn't die before you? I'd like to know. What insurance can you take to ensure that your child will no longer be subject to disease? And to children out there, what insurance can you take to ensure that your parents don't die? Do you not realize that's going to happen one day, for sure? It's written in stone. It's absolutely going to happen. There's nothing that can stop it. The problem is, when that happens, are you ready for it? When that day comes when you have to say goodbye, are you ready for it? Will you be able to stand on your own 2 feet, control yourself, be able to look at the situation and reflect on the fact that this is happening to them, it's going to happen to me pretty soon, this was going to happen someday. Yang kinchi samude dhammang sabbantan nirodha dhammanti. Are you going to be able to reflect on that? If anything comes into rise due to causes, all of those things, when the causes cease to exist, will cease to exist. Are you going to be able to look at your parents on their deathbed and think to yourself, reflect on the fact that all I'm looking at is a result of causes that once gave life to this person and sustained their life. Now those causes have ceased to exist, and therefore the result, which is this life, is going to cease to exist. Do you think you'll be able to do that? Because if you don't understand it, if you don't get the feeling behind it, if you can't relate to it, then no amount of reading about it in the Tripitaka, no amount of listening to Dhammadeshana, sermons, no amount of looking at obituaries is going to make sense in your own head, in your own mind, that this is going to happen to me as well. And when that day happens, when that day comes, am I prepared for it? Am I ready for it? And parents, think about your children. If that day ever does come when you're stood in front of your child's coffin and they're in there, you're going to be able to bear it? You're going to be able to tolerate that? Are you going to be able to look at it and go and think to yourself, Yam kinchi samude dhammang sabbantan nirodha dhammanti? You're going to be able to reflect on that Dhamma and not be overtaken by grief, not be completely destroyed at that moment in time? You're going to be able to do that? Because if not, then where is your understanding of Dhamma? I think if that day ever does come, you will be able to test your own level of knowing versus understanding. But let's hope that it's not on that day you have to make that decision, because then frankly it's going to be too late. There are times when parents can't bear that kind of pain, and sometimes they lose their senses. They go insane. That's not a nice thing. Ultimately this is a human being that can comprehend the world, can look at things and make sense of it. To lose their sense, to become nonsensical, to become insane, there's nothing worse. But what we've got to be able to do right now is not wait until we have to experience pain. Because if all you have is knowledge, then you're only going to be able to experience pain when the day comes, after the fact. But if you have an understanding, you're then going to be able to look into the future. You're going to be able to penetrate through these layers of these veils that you think is what gives you happiness. The things, the objects, the people, the children, your children, your parents, your loved ones, all of these things that on the surface looks like, these are the things that give me happiness. You're going to be able to penetrate through that and look beneath the surface and understand, hang on a second, isn't it the same things? Isn't it the same objects? Isn't it the same people that's going to bring me the most amount of pain and the most amount of suffering? The things that I hold so closely, so dearly, that I feel like are part of me, isn't it the same things that have the potential to completely destroy me? Have you not seen how sometimes, couples that have known each other, boyfriend, girlfriend, for a very long period of time, many years, they get together and get married, and then they, because of some kind of rift, they depart from each other, but one person in that relationship completely loses their mind as a result. They go insane. Now, if that person was able to look into the future, I don't mean literally, I mean through wisdom, understand before the point that they are attached to this person I'm looking at right now, that I'm going to attach myself to, is this very same person that one day has the potential to bring me the most amount of pain and the most amount of suffering. Wouldn't you think twice before you go and attach yourself to that person? Wouldn't you think twice before you go and attach yourself to that Ferrari? Wouldn't you think twice before you go and attach yourself to that favorite toy? Because if what we're looking in life for is happiness, why do we go about setting forth in motion the process that ultimately brings us the most amount of pain and suffering? Isn't that pointless? How much meaning is there to doing that? So this is what I want you to think about, hopefully for the rest of this week. Think about the people you're attached to a great deal. Again, it could be your children, it could be your parents, your loved ones, your aunt, your uncle, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your best friend. And then ask yourself the question, it seems apparent to me that it's this person that brings me the most amount of happiness, the most amount of joy. But is it not the very same person that has the potential to bring me the most amount of pain, the most amount of grief, the most amount of agony, the most amount of suffering, and has the potential to make me go crazy? Has the potential to make me lose my mind? Has the potential to make me go insane? Is it not the same person? Why do we not look at that bit? Why do we just look at half of the picture? Where's the rest of it? Why do we wait until after the fact to start thinking about, why did I not consider this? Why did I not look into this? Why is it always after the fact? Because then it's too late. You're suffering now. You set in motion the process that was going to get you this result. Now it's too late. Now you have to suffer the consequences. But if you were able to do that before the fact, if you were able to do that before you went around attaching yourself to things and people and objects and occurrences, incidents, what if you had the power to do that? Well, the power to do that is wisdom. It's wisdom that gives you the power to do that. So if you don't have enough wisdom that enables you to look at a person an object, and at the point that you are going to attach yourself, look at the potential for that person or that object to completely destroy you. If you don't have the wisdom to do that just yet, then remind yourself, my wisdom is yet to be developed. I'm still behind on my wisdom. That's not something to be happy about. That's not something to be proud about. Because it's exactly because you don't have that amount of wisdom, remember, you're going to suffer one day. Because even if things like breakups don't happen, even if an accident doesn't happen, either the parents are going to have to stand at the grave of the children, or the child is going to have to stand at the grave of a parent. It's going to happen one way or the other. Which way are you ready for? It's going to happen at least one way or the other, and sometimes both. Some people are so unfortunate, that they have to not only bury their parents when they pass away, but also bury their children when they pass away. If you're a parent, if you're a child today, are you prepared for that? Will you be able to tolerate that? If no is the answer, then what do you think you need to do? Cultivate your wisdom. Look into it. Understand that the moment I attach myself to something, the moment I deem that this one person, this one object is what brings me the most amount of happiness, this one person, that same object is what's going to bring me the most amount of pain. In fact, especially for the young people listening to this, I'll give you an exercise to do. Take a bit of paper, write down on one side objects, on the other side people. Now write down in the order of most to least the objects that you like, that you really, really like, the objects that you find it difficult to live without. So, as a reminder, that could be your favorite toy, it could be your computer, your bicycle, your car. Okay? On the other side, where you have people, write down the people that you like from most to least. Now, if you flip that paper the other way around and you hold it up to a light, what you're seeing now is a list of objects and the list of people, again from most to least, but in terms of the amount of potential suffering that those objects and those people are going to bring you. If you think I'm wrong, tell me so. Reflect on this. I think, Nibbana is there, in just that. That's all you need for Nibbana. At least for the first half of it. To understand that it's the things that I'm really attached to. My job, my house, my family, that has the potential to bring me the most amount of suffering. If you can appreciate that, if you can understand that, you then understand what the Buddha meant by when he said, look, penetrate the things that bring you happiness and see through, and you'll see how that brings you suffering. Because if you're able to do that, you're already halfway there. So I want you to do this as an exercise, and hopefully next week when we meet up, you can tell me how that made you feel, how that made you feel, what sort of an experience that was, whether that got you to take a new perspective on how you attach yourself to things, or even if you from this point forward in life, before you go and attach yourself to something or someone, you think twice. you not only think about how this person is going to bring you happiness, but also the other half, how this one person, this one object is going to has the potential to bring you so much pain one day. Now don't let yourself be fooled by the fact that, or by this, by an opinion, or perhaps a view that, this object that I really like is never going to cause me any harm, or this person that I'm attaching myself to, my girlfriend, my boyfriend, they're never going to hurt me. They're always going to be with me. Really? It's easy to think that. But if that were the case, don't you think that every couple that got together would have done so with the same opinion, with the same intention, under the same false view? Do you think any two people would have ever got married knowing that the other person is going to cheat on them? No. They all built up hopes. They all thought, here's that person that's going to bring me the most amount of happiness. Do you think any two parents would have brought a child into this world if they could see that the child that is going to be born is going to be deformed, has some kind of condition that means is fatal, that they only have 6 months to live, 6 days to live? If parents were able to look into the future, do you think they would ever do that? Well, don't you think whenever parents decided to bring a child into this world, all they could think of was, our child is going to be the most perfect child, fully formed child that the world has ever seen, the most intelligible, the most intelligent, the most beautiful, the most handsome baby ever. Don't all parents think like that? But is that the reality? Let's not fool ourselves. Let's not be like that man stood on that bed of nails, not taking a moment to look down at his feet, to look down and realize that he was actually stood on a bed of nails, and that every time he moved around, those nails cut his feet with every step he took. Let's not be that man. Because if you can realize, if you can understand what the problem is, finding the solution is easy. Make sure you understand the problem. So that's what I want you to do this week. I've given you an activity, particularly for those young listeners out there, and if parents are listening to this as well, then try and encourage your children to do that, at least to come and share that with you at home. That list of, here are the most favorite objects, here are the most favorite people. Flip that piece of paper around and ask yourself, what is it that I have now? What is it most to least that's standing in front of me right now? Is it still the most amount of happiness, or is it now the most amount of suffering? So, I hope today's session has been useful. I really wanted to try and talk to you and open your eyes to think about this, because as I said at the start, what I've been realizing is, despite how much time we invest in talking about or talking to Dhamma, people spend a lot of time practicing virtue and concentration and wisdom, sila, samadhi, prajna, but yet when it's time to let go, when it's time to say goodbye, suffering is plentiful. So then you really have to beg, it begs the question, how much Dhamma have you really understood? What's the point of knowing Dhamma? Let's not be a potila. Let's not be a portal that was insulted by the Buddha. Don't be that person. Be someone like Venerable Assaji, the great Assaji, who said to Upadissa, I know very little Dhamma. I'm an Arahant, yes, but I know very little Dhamma. Be someone like him. You only need to know very little. You only to understand the Four Noble Truths. Once you understand the Four Noble Truths, there is nothing that can stop you from achieving that result, that is Nibbana. And so I hope, and I wish, and I pray that the merits that we have all accrued by listening to this Dhamma and in preaching this Dhamma help you all achieve that fruit, that is Nibbana. And I hope you all join me in passing those merits to the Devas, the Brahmas, and everyone else that we invited at the start to join us. May all beings accept the merits that have been accrued, and may all beings achieve the ultimate bliss, the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this birth itself. Samma Sambuddhi Saranai, Teruvan Saranai.